Welcome to another episode of the REDOABLEs. The REDOABLEs are races that I have done in the past and would definitely go back and do. Kind of inspired by Bill Simmons of TheRinger.com, who does a thing called the Rewatchables, where they rewatch old movies and talk about them. And I kind of do that with some of the races I've done over the past decade or so. And today's race is going to be Beyond Limits Ultra. This race is definitely a redoable in that I have been there every year since the first year, 2013. And I would go this year, but I am recovering from my congestive heart failure and a number of other issues. So I may be there in spirit. I may show up, hopefully, to volunteer, maybe do some laps. But I'm really trying to back off on competing in the really long races. So that's why I'm not going to probably race this year. Though you never know, I might change. It's not till April 8th, 11th of this year. It was canceled last year due to COVID. And so it's been sold out, but there is a wait list. And I highly recommend if you're looking for a race anywhere from 50 miles to 72 hours, this is the one for you. Put yourself down on the wait list and you'll probably get in. It'd be well worth the trip out here to California. Besides being a great race, it also raises money. It is at the Pathfinder Ranch, and they've raised over $100,000 for the kids there in the past 7 years. And it's basically what it is it's a ranch where the kids go there for I think like a week, and they've got bunkhouses, and it has a cafeteria, it has all activities, it has a whole bunch of horses, roosters, all kinds of animals, and you run around all these things during the course. The great thing is, unlike a lot of ultras, if you're doing a multi-day or 24-hour, you don't got to camp out on some dirt or in the grass. You can actually stay in the bunkhouses. The bunkhouses have showers, they're heated, which might be a temptation not to get out there and do the race, but it's definitely very comfortable to be there. Friends and family can come. Most years, of course, with COVID, things might be a little bit different, but it's a really great family experience. It's up in the mountains above Palm Springs at about 4,500 feet. So the altitude, you do notice it, and it slows you down a bit, but it's a real family-like atmosphere, and it's really great. I know there's families that I've grown up with. I've seen their kid when they're like 7 or 8, and now they're in high school, come every year and do the race. And they also will have activities like rock climbing, archery, horseback riding. The race runs around this little lake, and you can actually go kayaking. And a few athletes during their race have gone kayaking. I know in the 48-hour and 72, Catcher Corbett, I've seen her out there kayaking. And it's very entertaining to see your fellow competitors out there enjoying themselves so much. Along with a place to stay and for your family to stay, they also feed you at this race. And they don't just feed you, they feed you well. Since it is a camp for kids, they have a big cafeteria and they cook lots of really good nutritious food there. And so you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the most part, most of the days. Well, the night before they serve you lunch and they serve you breakfast in the morning. Serve you breakfast in the morning, and then you have dinner in the evening. And it's, eggs and bacon, vegan options too, and then the evening, and you sit family style, you serve yourself family style. And the night before, they always have a guest speaker talk while the people are eating and getting ready for the race the next day. Of course, if you're doing the 72 and 48 hour, you got to sneak in there and get some food while you're going around the 2-mile loop. And it's interesting that, of course, one year they had the kid who had climbed Everest, and he'd been one of the youngest ever to climb Everest, I believe. And then one year we had Joe Fegis, before he broke the 6-day records, came and talked. And of course, he's now the American record holder in the 6-day over 606 miles. Catcher Corbett has been a speaker. The Jester's been a speaker, and many others over the past 7 years. So it's a great kind of thing like that. And it's a testament to their 8th annual reunion of runners that over 70% of last year's runners were repeat blue runners. Known for being the best family and crew-friendly multi-day race around, we've added even more family-friendly activities to it. It says, in addition to free canoeing and archery offered on multiple days, we'll have horseback riding sessions for a small fee. And in 2020, runners will be able to register their kids and family members for a 90-minute astronomy class. Wow, they're going to have telescopes and everything. But there's even more. There'll be a 90-minute adventure hikes. And so there's just tons of things to do. And then, it kind of says here, all race registration includes on-site lodging in the heated bunkhouses with hot showers, 2 full meals per day catered by Pathfinder culinary team. This in the also an aid station. On-site lodging for crew and family members can be purchased for $45 a night. Very good deal. Very, very good deal. The Pathfinder culinary team also will feed your friends and family as well for a fee. And then at night, of course, it's kind of crazy. They have a big screen for television, and they also have a hot tub. And I've seen athletes during the race get into the hot tub as well. So the events are 72-hour, 48-hour, 24-hour, 100-mile, 50-mile, and 50K. So pretty much everything and anything you'd want in an ultra event, and that's what Beyond Limits is. The blue race, Beyond Limits. And it says there are no boundaries at Pathfinder Ranch, one of Southern California's premier educational sleepaway camps. Push beyond your perceived limits on 72 private acres of wildlife and surrounding forest meadows situated southwest of Palm Springs in the San Jacinto Mountains at a comfortable altitude of 4,500 feet, with less than 40 feet of gain or loss per 2-mile loop. Now entering its 8th year, the Beyond Limits has established itself as arguably the most unique loop ultra event in the country. And like I said, you get to run by. And so what it is like I've done this race. Obviously, I did the first one in 2013. In fact, it was my first timed event. Before that, 2010, I got back into doing ultras, and I was doing 50 milers with the idea of maybe doing 100 miles sometime. I did do the Endurance Challenge 100 mile in 2011 where you run across LA on the streets of LA. But I kept DNFing at getting disqualified, actually missing aid stations cutoffs. The last one was San Diego in, I think, 2012. I missed mile 75 by like 5 minutes. So I kind of gave up trying to make cutoffs, and then people kept telling me, you got to do these timed events. And I'd heard of them. The Bakersfield has a strong tradition, not only in Ironmans and marathoning back in the late 70s and 80s, but a lot of guys were doing ultras. So I had friends like Eddie Lujan and Bob Moses doing Angeles Crest and doing Western States. And then we had one guy, Leo Marquez, who I used to train with a lot. He did like 140-something miles on a 24 hours on a track. So I knew about him. So I saw Beyond Limits. It was the first year they were having the race. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a 24-hour race. Went out there and did 93 miles and really enjoyed it, and have pretty much been sticking to that type of event since then. So the first year I did the 24. The second year I went out there and did 24. Didn't have as good a time because I was just having some issues. And then I've done a 100-mile race there. In fact, my fastest 100, I did sub 27-hour 100 there. And then in 2016, things really came together. I went to across here as a 6-day race. Was just having a terrible time. After 4 days, I just went home, went back, recovered, went and did it. It's kind of funny. I always say that I went and did a 50K in March, the DO 50K that raises money for Students Run LA, and I came in dead last. So I got a nice DFL trophy. And so I go to Beyond Limits that year, and I signed up for the 48-hour. I think it was the first year they had the 48. And I kind of enjoyed 48 hours. And I had done one before, I think. Yeah, I'd done across the years where I'd done 137 miles. And I went out there, and a couple young guys got a 15, 20-mile lead on me on the first night, by the first 24 hours. But then over the second night, I kept catching up to him. And I eventually did win after a big battle with my friend Susan, where I only got her by a mile or two. But I really enjoyed that. And then I've done, like I said, the 100-mile after that. And then 2019, I'd get a 72-hour, but I was having some issues and decided to call it and stopped early. So the course, like I was saying before, you start at the lake, you run around the lake, and it's a nice kind of gravel dirt path. Then you leave, and then you run through the bunkhouse area, and that's where most of the friends and family are. And of course, you're running by your nice bed, but there's real bathrooms in that area. Head out there, then you run down this horse trail. Then you hang a left and you run along like a little sandy riverbed, and then you end up into the forest through the trees, which is really pretty at times. At night, it's a little bit dark in there, and so if you definitely need a headlamp, flashlight. And then you get back, you come back to civilization, you go around the little horse stall, by the pigs and the roosters, you go down this cul-de-sac and then come back out. And then you go down a nice road, which I always like, and then you run around the big horse pasture, and then you come back in, and that's where the lake and the start-finish line is. They have great aid stations. Ken and Stephanie, the race directors, do a great job with it. Great timing systems. They'll get you whatever you need to get you going and basically to get you to go beyond your limits. I've been, like I said, there many, many years, but this year I've just chose not to really do any longer races than maybe 3-4 hours, so I probably will not be entering there because even a 50K sounds a little bit too daunting for me. The first year they had this race was in mid-March, and it got pretty chilly at night. I remember frost on the grass and stuff. But since they moved it to early April, it's really comfortable. It might get to 40ish in the evening, late night, and during the day it's beautiful weather as well. Never really had any rain issues or any of that type of thing. I would recommend, though, bring a good headlamp. And there is some sandy areas, so if you want to use the old gators, that might be helpful as well. I myself don't use them. What's really great is there's a variety of different terrains. You're not going to run the fastest race there, but it's definitely not a consistent surface where you just get beat up and pounded. It is pretty flat, but you've got dirt, pavement, sand. The sand gets a little at times difficult, but all in all, it works out well. Now I'm going to just kind of go through some of the people that are going to be at this year's, and unfortunately when I read this, then I'm like, man, I need to sign up and do it. But of course, I just got off the phone with Ed Eddinghouse, the jester, and he's been there every year, and he will be there. And of course, Ed, if it's the long one, he's got to run the 72-hour. My buddy Abby Hendricks is going to be there doing the 72-hour. I've done 6-day races with her, and she's there. And then kind of going down here, Catcher Corbett, of course, going to be there in the 72-hour. Hervé, I see him. Dennis Williams is going to be doing, wow, he's in the 72-hour. He's one of the guys I caught in the 48 that year. Scott Thompson, always at these events, and he's a lot of fun. Tracy Thompson, they have Marvelous Mud. They make a lot of the awards and things here in California, and so she's going to be at that. And then my buddy who called me up the other day to tell me about the Clubhouse app, Bob Davison is going to be in there doing this 72-hour as well. He's training for the 6 days of the Dome, which him and Yolanda are going to both be there representing us walkers. So quite a field of people in that. 25 people already signed up on that. In the 100-mile race, let me see, Jacob Jackson. Oh my, he's a USA American 24-hour team guy. He helped the Americans win a gold a couple years ago, and very consistent, really great guy. Be fun to watch him there. Joshua Holmes is going to be there. He runs the club, Run It Fast. My buddy Christina Sorensen, I haven't seen her in a while, would definitely be there. I see Claudia Newsom. She runs many multi-day races. Danny Westgard's going to be there. He's done Badwater, oh my gosh, a dozen times or something. He's going to be in the 100-mile. Very interesting. Lots of really good people in this event. I'm just kind of going over some of the people that are, I know a lot of these people, but people that you may have heard of if you follow the ultra world. And then, of course, my baby, the 48-hour race, which I really like. Grant Barnett, of course, is going to be there. He comes up to Bakersfield and does a lot of my races. Susan Kokash is going to be there. She's the lady in 2016 that with 40 hours to go, me and her moved in the first and second. She spent most of the night chasing me down, never did, and almost caught me at the end. And she's later on gone over 140 miles, and she's a great lady. Brent Jackson, he's a captain of a Navy ship, and he's the guy one of the other guys I caught in that 2016 race. And what a gentleman, him and the other guy, I'm flanking on it. Both great guys. Like the second morning, they came to me and just congratulated me on the win. But I was like, hey, I got Susan still on my tail. And what's interesting is really what I like about Brent is he really learned a lot from that race. He trained super hard. He came back the next year and just crushed my course record, 138 miles. He did 150, but he got beat by Kelly Agnew. And, of course, you may have heard of Kelly Agnew because he's the Porta Potty Bandit who a few years later they finally caught him cheating at Across the Years. And he'd been cheating at all these races. I always tell people that was interesting is in 2017 when I was doing the 100-miler instead of doing the 48 on the second morning of the 48. Kelly, who, I never really saw much on the course. Imagine that. I mean, in fact, me and the Jester talked about it, and we did a podcast about it, where, you'd see Kelly during the daytime. He'd be flying by you all the time, but you wouldn't see him ever at night. And I can't actually remember ever seeing him at night now. Well, it's interesting. In the morning on the second day of the 48, so I was, I don't know, I was probably, I was finishing up my 100-mile race. Kelly went by me, and he's like, hey, Andy. And I'm like, what? And he goes, you know your course record? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, it's now mine. So I was cheating that time too. So long story is Brent had got his victory stolen from him, and thankfully the organizers and everybody have rewarded Brent the following year with his awards and stuff, and he came back and did really well. But it was just such a sad type of thing going on with that whole cheating scandal. And I moved up several places in a lot of races because of Kelly. I still remember it across the years. When I came in third male, fifth overall, I think, or something like that. I half-ass internet research, but I remember going, second place was only 142 miles, and I was fifth overall, third male. I was like, second place was only 142 miles, so I was only 5 miles out of second place. But then I was like, first place was like 201 miles, so it really kind of screwed my story. Well, it turned out Kelly was the 201 miles. His trick that he got caught at across the years, I'm sure he was doing it before, was during the daytime or whatever he'd do is he would run 2 laps and skip a lap. So he'd do 2 miles and then take a mile off. And the way Michael Meldon, Brent Milton's a music guy here in Baker. So Michael Melton, the way he caught him was he kind of figured out a pattern, because across the years they have a 1 mile loop, they have timing mat at start finish, but they also have a timing mat on the other side of the field, the half mile. And so Mike just watched it and noticed he wasn't going through that half mile loop every third lap. And so on the 18th lap, Mike was at the start finish line. He watched Kelly, and he just followed him, hit his watch, and he saw Kelly go into a porta potty and then come out miraculously in about 8 or 9 minutes to complete that lap. They walked up to him, confronted him, and the rest is history. So not to really mess up with the great race, the Beyond Limits, but I have to hand it to all the race directors for taking care of the situation.